Monica Harris hadn't slept more than 3 hours in days. The ache in her bones spreading deeper with every shift she picked up. The weight of 3 jobs pressing down on her like the winter air curling around her coat. That cold New Orleans morning, her fingers raw and cracked from scrubbing floors and counting change for groceries. Her mind consumed by worry for Isaiah, her youngest. Still in the hospital coughing through pneumonia while bills piled like bricks. She was too tired to carry. And as she crossed St. Charles Avenue, plastic grocery bag clenched in one numb hand, she spotted him, a ragged figure slumped against the iron gate of a mansion so large. It could have been a hotel, his clothes torn and caked with grime, his shoes nothing more than frayed fabric clinging to tired feet, and beside him, a piece of cardboard, "I need help," scrawled in desperate strokes. But what broke Monica wasn't the sign. It was the way people passed him. A man in a navy suit sneered and muttered, "Get a damn job." A couple in pearls and Rolexes clicked their tongues like his presence offended their morning. And a young man in designer sneakers actually recoiled when his foot brushed the beggar's leg, tossing a crumpled dollar at him with a venomous sneer. Buy yourself a clue. And Monica, already stretched thin by life's cruelty, felt something inside her snap, not in anger, but in conviction. Because she knew what it was like to be ignored, dismissed, treated as invisible just for being a black woman trying to survive. And so, without hesitation, she stepped off the sidewalk, knelt beside the man, her knees cold against the concrete, and said gently, "Have you eaten?" And when he shook his head with eyes so tired they barely stayed open, she handed him the loaf of bread she'd bought with her last $5, then reached into her coat pocket and gave him the bill too, saying, "It's not much, but if you're hungry, I'll share what I've got." And in that moment, the man, who hadn't spoken more than a whisper all day, looked at her with a bewilderment so deep it bordered on pain, then said, "You don't have to." And she replied, "Maybe, but someone has to." And for the first time in who knows how long, he smiled just a little, just enough for Monica to feel like she hadn't failed the day. And as they sat there, ignored by the city, he told her his name was Grant, though he looked like a man who hadn't spoken his name aloud in weeks. And when she asked how long he'd been out here, he only said long enough. And when she asked why people treated him like that, he answered, "Because it's easier to see me as a problem than a person." And Monica, whose life had been one long string of humiliations and sacrifices, nodded because she understood that truth too well. And after a long silence, as he stared at the bread in his lap like it was a gift he wasn't sure he deserved, she told him about Isaiah, about the hospital bills, about her husband who died suddenly 2 years ago and left her alone with 2 kids and no savings, about working 3 jobs and still falling short. And Grant listened, really listened, his eyes focused, his expression quiet but stormy, until finally he said, "I have money." And Monica blinked, confused, thinking he meant a crumpled 20 tuck somewhere. But then he sat up straighter and said, "I'm not actually homeless." And before she could protest, he added, "My name is Grant Kensington," and pulled a black wallet from inside his ragged jacket, flipping it open to reveal an ID that read CEO. And he pointed to the mansion behind him and said, "This house is mine." And Monica's world tilted, her breath catching in her throat as she stared at him, the reality slipping sideways, the pieces clicking into place, the calm authority in his voice, the way he held himself even when wearing rags, the intensity in his gaze. And she asked, "Why?" And he said, "Because I needed to know what it felt like to be forgotten, what people do when they think you have nothing." And when she didn't speak, too shocked, too numb, he added, "You're the only one who saw me." And then he reached into his wallet again and pulled out a sleek black credit card, holding it out to her, saying, "This will cover Isaiah's bills, every penny." And when she stammered, "You don't even know me," he smiled and said, "You didn't know me either, but you still gave me everything you had." And Monica's throat tightened so fast she could barely breathe, the tears threatening to break loose as her fingers hovered over the card, unsure, trembling, afraid of hope after years of learning not to trust it. And Grant saw that too, and said, "You don't owe me anything. This isn't charity." It's balance, and when she still hesitated, he added, "You changed my life today. Now let me help change yours." And finally, with a breath that shook her entire frame, Monica took the card, the weight of it shocking in her hand, like holding her future. And as she stood, he stood too, brushing off the dust. And when she asked, "You sure about this?" he smiled a little and said, "No, but I'm doing it anyway." And that was when Monica laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. And she offered him her hand, which he took firmly, the handshake solid and real. And when she walked away from that iron gate, the world felt different, like something had cracked open. Like maybe miracles weren't fairy tales after all. And a year later, Monica sat across from him again at a quiet cafe near the park. Sunlight warming her face, her coat newer now, her skin brighter, her spirit no longer crushed beneath debt and despair. And Isaiah was healthy, her job steady, and her soul healed in ways she couldn't name. And Grant, dressed now like the man he had always been, looked at her and said, "You taught me something I didn't expect." And when she raised an eyebrow, he added that the ones with the least often give the most. And she smiled, that knowing kind of smile only the broken who've healed can give, and said, "And I learned that kindness always finds its way back." And when they lifted their coffee cups to toast, the clink between them wasn't just a sound, it was a beginning.